All right, welcome to the Zevon Chronicles, barring a more creative name, episode 1. Okay, so if you've listened to the podcast before, then you know that, you probably know that I'm a huge Warren Zevon fan. It's rather obvious, particularly since we added a video element. As the images behind me are both, and the record, the clock record up above it, are all references to Warren Zevon. I'm a huge fan. And I know he was the first artist that I really became like obsessed with and appreciated at the level of songwriting, and he informed a lot of my musical interests today. So I know his records front and back, and so I think a fun part of doing the Record Night podcast, in the format we do, listening to entire records. It's fun to get the backstory to the record, and so on the Record Night podcast, if I do a record, I usually have I usually know a lot about the record. But if Jake or Joe or a guest comes on with a record that I'm not all that familiar with, I'm really just more like reacting to it in real time. But I thought it'd be fun to go through these, just to get a little bit more of the story. When was the record recorded? Where? What are the songs about? How were the songs written? Where were they written? All that sort of fun stuff. And so I thought it'd be fun to do that with Warren Zevon record. So the image that I referenced behind me with all his all the studio albums that he came out with throughout his entire career. When I was younger, I found that I could buy all of his CDs. It was done over time, but I mean pretty quickly because they were all pretty cheap. I was able to get most of them for a couple bucks, like on eBay or something. And so that's how I generated that image. But I've slowly been going after his entire vinyl collection, which not all of his records were pressed on vinyl. There's still a couple that were not. 1995's Mutineer is not on vinyl. And then 2000's Life Will Kill Ya, although Life Will Kill Ya is coming on vinyl. I don't know how I saw, but there's if you look it up on Amazon, it says it's coming in like a couple weeks from the date that I'm recording this, actually. So I imagine that'll just leave Mutineer, and so I imagine that eventually they'll press Mutineer on the vinyl, and then I can have the entire collection. So I don't have, and I'm not going to feature, if you could see back here, his first record, Wanted Dead or Alive, from 1969. Later in Zevon's career, he didn't even really like to talk about that record. And they didn't press many copies, so it's difficult to get your hands on. So at some point, maybe I'll change my mind and decide I do want it to have the complete collection or whatever. But at this point, I don't have it, and so I'm not going to do that one. And then I'm also not going to do his next record, which is, for all intents and purposes, considered his debut, Warren Zevon from 1976. We did a Record Night podcast episode featuring that record, so I would just direct you to that. And I think I talked about it sufficiently in that one. So that means I'm going to start with 1978's Excitable Boy. So this is arguably his best record, certainly his most successful from a commercial perspective. It reached number 8 on the Billboard charts for albums, and it features Werewolves of London, which was his only top 40 hit. It reached number 21. The record was certified gold in 1978 and certified platinum in 1997. So what I'll say about this record is it's easy for me to forget about this one, and just being such a huge fan of all of his work, it's easy for me to just kind of move on from this one because it's so popular and I'm so eager to shine a light on the rest of his work. But I'm excited to go back and give this one a listen because it is really, really, really good. It's more of a rock and roll record than even his first one. His first one had, Poor Pitiful Me and I'll Sleep and I'm Dead are pretty raucous tracks. But other than that, it's really pretty laid back, I would say. So, this is definitely a good one. And I'm excited to listen to it, and then we'll go through song by song. Enjoy. So here it is. I'm gonna get this out, and I'm gonna get this spinning here. I have, and this is an original copy from 1978, but they did remaster this one, and they recently, I'm really tempted. I don't have to because I already have it, but I'm really tempted. They came out with a glow in the dark copy that you could buy. So it would be nice to have a brand new version of this record, and you can get it. I'll provide a link where you can get it at Plaid Room Records. I imagine they sell it other places, but Plaid Room is just a local record store here in Ohio. They've got a pretty decent selection, and they ship all over the place. So that's the link I'll provide. But yeah, pretty cool. So this is really, I mean, just regardless of Warren Zevon, I think this is just a classic rock and roll record. So this is a good one. If you're going to get any Warren Zevon record, this is a good one to get your hands on.
They'll be rocking in the project, walking down along the strand. Freddie, get ready, rock steady when Johnny strikes up the band. Johnny strikes up the band. That son of a bitch Van Owen blew off Roland's head. The Headless Thompson brothers, Norway's bravest sons up the score. They can still see his headless body stalking through the night in the muzzle flash of Roland's Thompson gun. He took little Susie to the junior prom. Excitable boy, they all said. Excitable boy. And he raped her and killed her, then he took her home. Excitable boy, they all said. Excitable boy. Well, he's just an excitable boy. I saw a werewolf drinking a pina colada at Trader Vic's. His hair was perfect. Werewolves of London. Bravo. We made man love, shadow love, random love, and abandoned love. Accidentally, like a martyr. The hurt gets worse and the heart gets harder. Nighttime in the switching yard. Someone called Maria's name. I swear it was my father's voice, saying if you stay you'll all be slain. You must leave now, you have no choice. Take the servants and ride west. Keep the child close to your chest. When the American troops withdraw, let Zapata take the rest. Eyes, she'll be streetwise to the lights and the jive talk, but you'll find true love and tenderness on the block. I'm the innocent bystander. Somehow I got stuck between the rock and the hard place, and I'm down on my luck. Yes, I'm down on my luck. Well, I'm down on my luck.
Okay, so just wrapped up the record. Just a few notes about it overall before I dig in song by song. Similar to the 1976 record, it was produced by Jackson Browne, but for this one, guitar player Waddy Wachtel also joined Jackson in the producer's booth, if you will, and he actually had a large influence on this record. Well, first of all, a lot of the stories and information and stuff that I draw from regarding this record come from this book, I'll Sleep and I'm Dead, The Dirty Life and Times of Warren Zevon. It's written by Crystal Zevon, but it's really it's really just a bunch of interviews. They just interviewed kind of everybody that was around Zevon at the time, so it just features excerpts from different people, and chronologically it sort of goes through his life. So this is a really good book, lots to read through if you're interested in Warren Zevon and his life. And it was released after he had passed away, so they really told all, and it kind of gets to, in the end of the book, he kind of indicated to his former wife Crystal that that's what he wanted, to tell my story, blemishes and all. And there are plenty of blemishes at this, particularly around this record. Warren Zevon is at the height of his alcoholism during the recording of this record and subsequent tour. So there's lots of crazy stories about the recording of this record, which I guess I'll get into. But anyway, as far as Waddy Wachtel's influence on the record, he notes in the book that the record was originally completed with Thule's Blues.
Oh, Thule, now wasn't I once your knight in golden armor, with the sun behind my hair, and my music filled the air.
And Frozen Notes.
Looking through my window at the dark and troubled sky, I think I see the ship of the broken-hearted passing by.
Two songs which are included on when they remastered the CD in 2007. They were included as bonus tracks. So those are really great songs, both Thule's Blues and Frozen Notes. But they're very they're folky. They're nicer. They're like love songs, and it's interesting. Had the record been completed with those two, I think it still would have been a good record. It would have been probably a lot more similar to the first Warren Zevon record. The two songs, Wachtel says, I don't think these songs belong in the record. I want you to write two more songs, and those two additional songs ended up being Tenderness on the Block and Lawyers, Guns, and Money, which finished the record. Lawyers, Guns, and Money is probably Warren Zevon's second most popular song after Werewolves. It's a great song. It's been covered by a ton of people. So yeah, just an interesting note about the record. It might have been entirely different if it weren't for Wachtel. A couple other notes about the record. It was recorded in 1977 and then released in 1978. It was recorded at the Sound Factory in Los Angeles, California. So as I mentioned previously, Zevon, during the recording of this record, is kind of at the height of his alcoholism, and had also developed an affinity for guns and began to collect them, as the sleeve on the record might indicate. From the book, I'll Sleep and I'm Dead, Bert Stein, who was a record company executive, says in the book, and I'll read from the book, I remember going over Warren and Crystal's house one day and seeing this big hole in the bathroom floor. I asked Crystal what that was from, and it was something about shooting cockroaches with the .45. I'm like, whoa. Kind of gave me a little idea of what was going on. So that's that was corroborated by somebody else. Also from the book, this is David Landau, and he corroborates the cockroach story. Warren was ticked off because everyone had been telling him not to shoot the gun he'd bought. They told him the recoil would take his arm off and that it would be deafening. So he sees a cockroach in the bathtub one day and says, fuck it. He gets the gun and shoots the cockroach with a .357 Magnum. His reaction is, hey, it wasn't that bad. So the album artwork for this, the front cover is just Warren Zevon's face, incredibly touched up. The photograph was taken by Jimmy Wachtel, brother of Waddy Wachtel, and I believe he was also he did the photograph for the first record, which is Warren Zevon after he had snuck into the like the Oscars or something to get a picture next to a spotlight. But anyway, regarding the front cover on this record, Jimmy Wachtel says, Laurie Sullivan and I went into the studio and shot pictures of Warren's face. We retouched them so much that he looked like he was 12 years old. Every time we'd retouch, he'd want more. So we erased his bad complexion. His hair was perfect, of course.
His hair was perfect.
It always looked like a cadaver with makeup on to me, but he liked it. We also did the gun on the plate, a .44 Magnum, which was designed by Crystal. So the record starts off with Johnny Strikes Up the Band. Great song to open the record. Nice upbeat track. Features Waddy Wachtel on guitars and harmony, Warren Zevon on the piano, Leland Sklar on the bass, Russell Kunkel on drums, and Danny Korchmar percussion. I've read varying interpretations of it. I never really knew. I just interpret it generally as just a song about music, the power of music kind of bringing people together. Johnny Strikes Up the Band. But the interpretation that actually wins out, and one that I just found out about, is that it's about the Tonight Show. So Johnny is Johnny Carson. Freddie Get Ready is a reference to Fred Cordova, who is the producer on the Tonight Show. And then a good clue as well is during live performances, certainly I think when he played this song on Stand in the Fire, a live album from 1980, certainly he would do an Ed McMahon impersonation, go, "Here's Johnny," right before the guitar solo in the song.
When Johnny strikes up, when Johnny strikes up, when Johnny strikes up the band. Yes, Johnny!
It's good song either way. But yeah, interesting context about it being the Tonight Show, which certainly, being released in 1978, certainly the Tonight Show, was a big deal back then. And you tend to hear people. I've never heard anybody say they dislike Johnny Carson. There's people who prefer. I prefer Leno, or they prefer Letterman, or whatever. But Johnny Carson seemed to be universally loved, and that's what the message in this song is. So the second track on the record is Roland, the Headless Thompson Gunner, one of Warren's most legendary songs. This one features Waddy Wachtel on guitar, Warren Zevon on piano and organ, Bob Glaub on bass, Russell Kunkel on drums, and the Gentlemen Boys. This is the first time we see the Gentlemen Boys on harmonies. And then the record notes, the Gentlemen Boys are Jackson Brown, Jorge Calderon, Kenny Edwards, J.D. Souther, and Waddy Wachtel. So this Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner is a song that I recall grabbing me in my youth. I originally got into Warren Zevon based on a best of Warren Zevon record that my mom purchased. It's called A Quiet Normal Life. It was released in 1986, and I really just wanted the CD for Werewolves. But somewhere along the line, I just had it playing, and this song comes on, and it's hard not to, if you hear the song just a little bit, you're immediately interested, and it's one of the best. It really is what got me interested in kind of narrative type songs, and this is one of the best there ever was. So Roland, a Norwegian mercenary fighting in the Congo War, and you could look on Wikipedia, there were a couple different conflicts going on there in the late 60s, and Roland is regarded as the best Thompson gunner. So this draws the attention of the CIA, and they have him killed by presumable double agent Van Owen, who's one of Roland's comrades. So he blows off Roland's head as the song goes, and then we get to an interesting part in the song. So at the beginning of the song, we have the chorus. It's just Roland the Thompson Gunner, but then at this point in the song, the chorus changes to Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner, and we also have competing harmonies singing over Warren in the background from the Gentlemen Boys, which gives the song a really cool feel, and is kind of part of the change in the song. So following the death of Roland, he still he's now Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner. His ghost, he scours the continent seeking revenge on Van Owen. He eventually finds him in a bar in Mombasa drinking gin, and he blows his body from here to Johannesburg. The end of the song also references Patty Hearst, suggesting she was inspired by the legend of Roland. So Patty Hearst, you can also look into her I didn't know that she was daughter of William Randolph Hearst. Of course, you know that if you're old enough and remember this being a story. She was kidnapped by some army, some liberation army. So she became internationally known for events following her 1974 kidnapping by the left-wing terrorist Symbionese Liberation Army, if that's how you say it. But anyway, later she was found and arrested, and she had been like participating with this terrorist group. So that's who Patty Hearst is. So anyway, Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner is a great song. It ended up being one of his most like a fan favorite, legendary tune. The cool thing about this song is a few times when he would play this song live, it's a really cool. I guess you get this with a few story type songs. You would actually get applause at the point at the end in which Roland takes out Van Owen and gets his revenge.
Roland made his Thompson gun. He didn't say a word, but he blew Van Owen's body from there to Johannesburg. Roland the Headless Thompson gun.
All right, the third track is the title track, Excitable Boy. This one is written by Leroy Marinell and Warren Zevon. Let's see who played on this one. Waddy Wachtel on guitar, Warren Zevon on piano, Bob Glaub on the bass, Russell Kunkel on drums, Jim Horn plays the saxophone, the only time we get a saxophone on the record. And then the harmonies are Linda Ronstadt, Jennifer Warnes, and Waddy Wachtel. So this is a great song. This is a classic Warren Zevon song. And both this song and the title of the album would go on to be one of Warren's nicknames, throughout the rest of his career and life, the Excitable Boy. So we get a reference early in the song to the Excitable Boy rubbing the pot roast all over his chest, and this part is actually autobiographical.
Excitable Boy, is there any truth to the story that this is in some way autobiographical?
The culinary part of the song.
The culinary part.
Yeah.
You actually rubbed a pot roast all over your chest.
Well, yes, I did.
Now, why exactly?
Well, remember, there's an expression, isn't there? Rub it on your chest. I don't know, it came through my mind. I felt enthusiastic, and I wanted to express my appreciation for this fine cooking.
Just slopped it right on?
Yeah.
This is I think it's a brilliant song about kind of for many reasons, and they do this. He does this both with the writing, but then also with the way the song is performed and everything. It seems to be just everybody kind of shrugging this dude's behavior off as he's just an excitable boy, but his behavior becomes progressively worse and worse. So first he just comes down to dinner in his Sunday best for a presumably normal dinner. There's no reason to dress up for this dinner. That's a little weird. Well, he's just an excitable boy. Next, we get he takes in the 4 a.m. show at the Clark, and he bites the usherette's leg in the dark. One interesting part about this song is there's actually a performance. He actually played this song live on WMMS of Cleveland, and this was in 1976, I believe. So this is before the record came out, but this song was written. And when he performs this song, the lyric goes, he bit the usherette's leg like that shark.
He took in the 4 a.m. show at the Clark. Excitable boy, they all said. And he bit the usherette's leg like that shark. Excitable boy, they all said.
So a reference to Jaws. But they changed it for this version, and so biting an usherette's leg, well, taking in a movie at 4 a.m. is, to each their own, but that's, odd. And then, biting the usherette's leg in the dark, again, a little bit concerning. Next, we get the turn in the song. He takes a little Susie to the junior prom. Little Susie being a reference to the Everly Brothers in the song Wake Up Little Susie. Of course, Warren Zevon was a band leader at one time for the Everly Brothers, piano player, and he hired the other players in the band and toured with them. So that's the reference there. after taking her to the junior prom, he then rapes her, kills her, then takes her home. After that, he's committed to a mental institution. After 10 long years, they let him out. He digs up her grave and builds a cage with her bones. The builds a cage with her bones part apparently came from Leroy Marinell. So Marinell notes in the book that a lot of people were trying to attribute all kinds of significance to this, building a cage with her bones. Marinell said it's nothing. It's just something that he something that was said in the schoolyard at one point. So there's no significance to it. But anyway, it made its way into the song. The brilliance of this song, I think, is it's a commentary, I guess, on just the difficulty in confronting mental health, really. And I think that's accomplished. First of all, this song has it always gave me a real 50s kind of feel to it. We have the doo-wop kind of vocals in the background, and that we get Lil Susie, the junior prom. It's just got this kind of 50s feel to it, and I love the harmonies are just this perfect. I mean, the song is real upbeat and positive despite the horror that's taking place within the song. And the harmonies are just perfect. They're just denial to me, right? This guy is, he's a monster, but it's just, ooh, excitable boy. So there's just nobody wants to deal with this. And so in that sense, it's a brilliant song, and it's, I suppose there were previous songs, but this is really an introduction to the dark Zevon humor that kind of defines him throughout the rest of his career. Werewolves of London is the next track, the most famous Warren Zevon song that ever existed, his only top 40 hit. It reached number 21 on the Billboard charts in 1978. So interesting story with this song. So Phil Everly suggested that Warren write a dance craze based on the 1930s movie Werewolves of London. So the song was written spontaneously in 15 minutes by Wachtel, Zevon, and Leroy Marinell. According to Wachtel in the book, he says, and I quote, he wrote the meat of that fucking thing. But it was a collaborative effort, and so Leroy Marinell had a lick that you hear in the song, the bum 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 bum. It's very similar to Sweet Home Alabama.
Sweet home Alabama, where the skies are blue.
So a lot of people have noted that, and it explains too why I don't know what year it was, but Kid Rock came out with the song All Summer Long, where he uses both samples, and so because they sound so similar, he was able to kind of use both, and they both worked.
Singing Sweet Home Alabama all summer long, catching walleye from the dock, watching the waves roll off the rocks.
Anyway, none of the writers really took this song very seriously, and in the book, Crystal Zevon explains that had she not written down the lyrics, the song might have never been recorded. Jackson Browne ended up he never recorded the song, but he was going around and playing it live.
This song was written by Warren Zevon. Remember the name, Z-E-V-O-N. I seen a werewolf walking with a Chinese menu in his hand through the streets of Soho in the rain, looking for that place they call Soho Land. Gonna buy myself a big plate of beef chow mein. Werewolves of London.
And people were asking him if he was going to record it, but he ultimately felt like Warren should record the song, and the rest is history. So Waddy Wachtel, co-producer of the record, notes in the book that most of the budget from this record went to this song. They tried a bunch of different band accommodations and couldn't get it right, and eventually they called on Mick Fleetwood and John McVie, a Fleetwood Mac, to come in and play the song, and so that's who ends up playing on the record. It's Waddy Wachtel on guitar, Warren Zevon on piano, John McVie on the bass, and Mick Fleetwood on the drums. But even with McVie and Fleetwood in the mix, they still did upwards of 60 takes on this song, and they ended up going with take two. They felt like take two was good, but they just kept doing it, but eventually they settled on take two, and that's the one that you hear on the record. So, being a very popular Warren Zevon song, this actually inspired a tattoo of mine. This is my version of the Werewolf of London. I went with more of a vicious werewolf, so this guy's hair is certainly not perfect. We modeled it more after an American Werewolf of London, which is a movie from 1981, so a lot later than the original 1930s movie that inspired this song. But still, he's dressed, he's dapper, and he's got his pina colada as well. So co-producer Waddy Wachtel says in the book, upon them picking Werewolves as the single for the record, he says, "Warren and I just about threw up. We were insulted, depressed. Artistically, it was like a fuck you. They took that piece of shit after we gave them Tenderness on the Block and Johnny Strikes Up the Band. Meanwhile, it's the only hit we ever had, and it will still be a hit when Ariel has grandchildren, but we didn't see that logic at all." So Werewolves has endured. It was featured in The Color of Money in 1986, I believe, so it sort of had a little bit of a resurgence at that point, and tons of people have covered it, including the Grateful Dead.
The Werewolves of London.
So the next track on the record is Accidentally Like a Martyr. This one features Waddy Wachtel on guitar, Warren Zevon on piano, Leland Sklar on the bass, Russell Kunkel on drums, Carlo Bonoff, and the Gentlemen Boys provide harmonies. So this track it's one of the most beautiful songs Warren ever wrote, as far as I'm concerned, and I love the placement on the record to end side one and following two really upbeat, raucous rock and roll tracks. This one really shows Warren Zevon's range and his ability as a songwriter. This is a song that I know has also been covered. Most notably, it was covered by the War on Drugs. I don't know if they included it on any of their records, but I've certainly seen them play the song.
We made love, shadow love, random love, and abandoned love. Accidentally like a martyr. The hurt gets worse, the heart gets harder.
Another interesting note about this song is a posthumous release entitled Preludes, Rare and Unreleased Recordings, featured a version of the song that was much, much different than the one we get on the album. It's, I don't know if it's quite upbeat, but it's, it's more of a comical kind of like, oh, woe is me, I can't win in these relationships. So very different from the version we get on the record. I like both, but yeah, definitely glad he ended up going with the ballad that we hear on this record.
Why'd I give you all the love I had to squander like you did? My friends all shook their heads inside, such a naive kid. My friends all shook their heads and wished I'd find somebody else. And now I'm all alone and feeling sorry for myself. Making mad love, shadow love, random love, and abandoned love. Accidentally like a martyr. The hurt gets worse and the heart gets harder.
There's also a lyric in this song at the end, the time out of mind, and that is presumably the inspiration for the 1997 studio record by Bob Dylan of the same name. Okay, so to start off side two, we get Nighttime in the Switching Yard. For the second time on the record, David Lindell gets a co-write credit along with Zevon and Jorge Calderon. As far as the lineup is concerned, we have Waddy Wachtel on guitar and synthesizer, Danny Korchmar on guitar, Warren Zevon on the synthesizer, Bob Glaub on the bass, Jeff Porcaro on drums and percussion, Greg Landini plays the bell, which is a cool part of the song. And the Gentlemen Boys provide harmonies. So the goal here was to create a danceable, kind of disco-like track, and it's definitely groovy. There's not much to this song. It's apparently based on a story from Lindell about the guy who switched trains in the yard also being a junkie. So that would inspire the lyric, get it out on the main line. But yeah, it's a pretty simple, repeated song, but it's definitely fun, and it sounds great. The band sounds really good on this song. So if their goal was to create a danceable track, mission accomplished. The next track on the record is Veracruz. This is a historical song by Zevon, something he did on his previous record with Frank and Jesse James, and something he'd really be noted for kind of throughout his career. As far as the lineup is concerned, it's Waddy Wachtel on guitar, Warren Zevon on piano, Kenny Edwards on bass, Rick Marotta on drums. This song also features some Mexican instruments. We have Arthur Gerst on the Mexican harp, Luis Damian on the jarana, which I had to look up, Manuel Vasquez on the requinto jarocho, also had to look up, Jim Horn on recorders, and Jorge Calderon, harmonies and Spanish vocals. This is another really beautiful song on the record, and I think it's really one of his most underrated. I mean, Accidentally Like a Martyr is, I think, considered one of his best songs. But yeah, this one's really beautiful, and I don't, Zevon is not really noted for, being a real talented vocalist, but I think his voice sounds really, it's like perfect on this song. He's got a little bit of a deeper voice, and it does really well on these, sad songs. So Jorge Calderon, who co-wrote the song, also sings Spanish vocals on the end. When translated, they read, "That day I swore, towards the port I will return. Although destiny changed my life, in Veracruz I will die. That day I swore."
Aquel día yo juré, hacia el puerto volveré, aunque el destino cambió mi vida, en Veracruz moriré. Aquel día yo
Okay, so the last two tracks we get on this record are the two songs that Waddy Wachtel kind of insisted be written to replace Frozen Notes and Toulouse Blues. So we start with Tenderness on the Block. So Tenderness on the Block, Waddy Wachtel on guitars, Warren Zevon on piano, Kenny Edwards on bass, Rick Marotta on drums, and the Gentlemen Boys provide harmonies. The interesting note about how this song being written, this is detailed in the book. There was an evening where Warren, in his drunkenness, had ripped the banister off of the staircase. So Crystal called Jackson Browne to help with the situation. So he came over, and he says by the time he got there, the situation had it cooled down. Warren didn't remember ripping the banister off of the staircase. And Jackson says they continued drinking and finished the song that night. So this song, presumably written for Ariel. I don't know if that was ever explicit. I've never explicitly read that, but in a more general sense, just kind of a song about, letting kids be kids, and you can't hold their hand the entire way. Actually reminds me of a song that's in my head because I just listened to it and it just came out. Jason Isbell song called Letting You Go.
Being your daddy comes natural. The roses just know how to grow. It's easy to see that you'll get where you're going, but the hard part is letting you go. The hard part is letting you go.
Very similar message, just you gotta let the kid go out there and grow up. It's a really nice song. It's a really upbeat song, and again, in the context of being added to the record, really helps give the entire record a more upbeat feel. So Lawyers, Guns, and Money closes out the record. This one featured Waddy Wachtel on guitars, Warren Zevon on piano, Kenny Edwards on bass, and Rick Marotta on drums. Like I mentioned earlier, probably Warren Zevon's second most popular song after Werewolves. And this one was covered by a couple different people. I think it was covered by Rick Derringer, and then was also a hit for Hank Williams Jr., if I'm not mistaken.
I'm hiding in Honduras. I'm a desperate man. Send lawyers, guns, and money.
Interesting story as to how this song was written. It's detailed in the book by Bert Stein, who was with Warren Zevon in Hawaii. He recalls Warren becoming friendly with one of the waitresses in the cocktail bar, and then he recalls Warren saying, "A friend of the waitress has a cabin up in the mountains. She's off tomorrow, and she'll take us there. We can get a little mountain experience. The three of us get in my rental car. We're going to spend the night up in the mountains and come back the next day. So we're driving through a sugarcane field, and Warren's sitting next to me. The girl is in the back seat. I ask how long before we get up there. She says, 90 minutes. She goes on to say, I'm sure my friend won't mind if we break in. I say, oh shit, Warren, I can see it now. A telegram to Joe Smith. Dear Joe, please send lawyers, guns, and money. And Warren says, Joe, send lawyers, guns, and money. And then I say, Warren, we're not going up there. He says, you're right. Back to the bar. So we get back to the cocktail lounge. On 2 cocktail napkins, he wrote lawyers, guns, and money. So as the story might indicate, the song opens, I went home with a waitress the way I always do. How was I to know she was with the Russians too? The Russians line has a little bit of a renewed significance today with McCarthyism making a comeback these days. He goes on to say he was gambling in Havana, he took a little risk, send lawyers, guns, and money, Dad, get me out of this. As he notes throughout the book, his dad was a gangster, so that provides a little context to that line. So this is an excellent way to close the record. Really hammering home. Interesting that it was not going to originally be on the record because it really hammers home the fun, kind of wild rock and roll record that this is. Warren Zevon's Hootin' and Hollerin' is on full display in this song, and we even get one of my favorite parts is the ow at the very end of the song.
Send lawyers, guns, and money. Ow!
So yeah, just a really fun song and a great way to close it out. Back to, I referenced before, Stand in the Fire, the live record from 1980. He does a great version of this song on that record where he's just full-blown, like, screaming. He gets to the end, the line, the shit has hit the fan, he just, like, absolutely screams it. It's terrific.
Send lawyers, guns, and money. The shit has hit the fan. Yeah!
So there it is, Excitable Boy. It's a quick record. At least by today's standards, it clocks in at just over 31 minutes in length. And yeah, this is a great one. It's a classic. It's just, like I said, regardless of Zevon, it's just a rock and roll classic, regardless, and arguably his best record. Let me know. I mean, if you're a Warren Zevon fan, leave a comment down below. Is this his best record? Do you have another one that's your favorite? Let me know. But like I said, it's certainly his most successful commercial project, and has some all-time Warren Zevon classics. So that's it for this episode of the Zevon Chronicles. We'll be back with his next record, Bad Luck Streak in Dancing School. And until then, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
I was staying in the Marriott with Jesus and John Wayne. I was waiting for a chariot, they were waiting for a train, and the sky was full of carrion. I'll take the Mazuma, sent Jesus to Mary, and that's a pretender. My ride's here. My ride's here. My ride's here.
Jake makes me so fucking mad! I can't stand it!